All right, so let's dive into this Brandermill Community Association Board of Directors meeting. It happened on February 13th, and we're going through this recap email that was sent out on the 20th. And there's some interesting things in here.
Yeah, there's some interesting twists and turns in this one.
Yeah, for sure. You don't always see a clerical error from an election kind of come back and have to be dealt with. So that's interesting right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. So they had an issue with the 2024 election, and there was a little bit of an incorrect vote count there. And so they had to figure out what to do. They initially were looking at possibly appointing someone temporarily, but what they actually ended up doing was recognizing the third place candidate from that ballot as an official board director.
Wow, so they're on the board now.
That's right.
Interesting. Okay, so we have a little electoral intrigue right off the bat. What else kind of jumped out at you from this meeting?
It looks like they're really trying to clarify and update the bylaws. So, for example, they made an amendment to Article I, which clarifies the language about a spouse living in Brandermill.
Oh, okay. Just making things crystal clear.
Yeah. So a little legal housekeeping.
Yeah.
I also noticed there was some discussion about extending the eligibility to run for the board to commercial business partners, not just the owners themselves.
Yeah, so it seems like they're trying to look at how to broaden participation and bring different perspectives to the board.
Okay, interesting. And speaking of different perspectives, they also talk about rental restrictions, which seems to be a hot topic.
Always a hot topic.
Yes. What is the board's stance on this?
Well, they're still in the very early stages. They're exploring options for leasing restrictions, occupancy restrictions, but they do recognize that there are going to be challenges when it comes to enforcement and also the impact on existing tenants.
So they're proceeding cautiously.
Yes, very cautiously.
Which makes sense given, how many people this could impact. Did they agree on any specific restrictions? Not yet. They're still refining the proposed language to make sure that it's clear and avoids any unintended consequences. They want to make sure that nothing they do could lead to evictions for existing tenants.
Okay, that sounds responsible. So the Harbour Pointe pool deck has also been a hot topic. Any updates on that?
So the pool deck replacement is still on hold while they gather more information, particularly regarding potential erosion issues. Interestingly, some members are now leaning towards a less extensive repair, maybe like a skim coat, to address the immediate trip hazards.
So a more practical, cost-effective solution.
Exactly. They want to make sure they're making informed decisions with a project of this scale.
Makes sense. They spent a significant amount of time on Article V of the bylaws. What is Article V even about?
That's the one dealing with assessments.
Okay.
So they reviewed sections related to capital assessment, compliance assessments, and recreation charge assessments. And a key point of discussion was making sure that the language for capital assessments covers commercial properties, which, we talked about earlier, that they're trying to broaden participation.
Right, so it's all kind of tying in together. What about those other assessments?
So for compliance assessments, they actually decided to remove subsection D entirely, but they're keeping subsection E. And then for recreation charge assessments, they seem to be content with the current wording.
Okay, so it seems like they're being very meticulous in this review process. Did they mention any timelines for finalizing these bylaw changes?
So they did decide to hold off on putting a particular proposal from Article V, Section 3G on the April ballot. And instead, what they want to do is have some town hall meetings to discuss both Article V and Article VII with the community.
Okay, so really get that input before making any final decisions.
Exactly.
That's good. Transparency is always good. Before we move on to part 2, is there anything else noteworthy from this meeting?
They did have a brief review of minor changes to Article VII, but there were no major decisions made there. And then, of course, they did announce their next Board of Directors meeting, which is going to be held via Zoom on February 24th at 6 p.m.
So mark your calendars, everybody. All right, so in part 2, we're going to be taking a deeper look at some of the nuances and potential implications of these discussions. What really jumps out at you from all of this?
Well, I think...
What are the big takeaways for the residents of Brandermill? Stay tuned to find out.
So we just went through all those highlights from the Brandermill Community Association board meeting.
Yeah, and now it's time to shift gears a little bit and really think about what these decisions could mean for you as a Brandermill resident.
Exactly right. And I think one of the things that really jumps out is this focus on the bylaw amendments, particularly those related to assessments and compliance. It really suggests that they're serious about strengthening their financial and regulatory framework. It's like they're tightening the bolts
Right.
to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Which makes sense. A well-defined set of rules can help prevent issues down the line. And I think create a more stable environment for everyone.
Absolutely. And for residents, this could mean a more predictable and well-managed community.
Right.
And I think it also hints that they're preparing for potential changes and challenges on the horizon.
Oh, that's an interesting point. Like, what kind of changes are we talking about?
Well, take, for instance, this discussion about including commercial properties in the capital assessment language.
Yeah.
That could indicate that they're anticipating some growth in Brander Mill's commercial sector.
Ah, I see. So they're thinking long-term and ensuring that any future developments are contributing fairly.
Exactly, and that could ultimately lead to, improved amenities, better infrastructure, or even lower fees for residents down the line.
Right.
But let's not forget about the elephant in the room, those rental restrictions.
Yes, those rental restrictions. That's sure to spark a lot of conversation. What's your take on the board's approach to this?
Well, I think the fact that they're even having this conversation suggests that they're grappling with the, evolving dynamics of the community. As more rental properties enter the market, it's natural for them to, consider the potential impact on property values and the overall character of Brander Mill.
Yeah, it's tricky. Because on the one hand, restrictions could help preserve property values and maintain a certain level of owner occupancy.
Right.
But then on the other hand, overly strict restrictions could limit housing options, for those who aren't ready or able to buy.
Right.
And that could impact, the diversity and vibrancy of the community.
It's a tough balance.
It is.
And it'll be really interesting to see how they navigate these competing interests.
Definitely something to watch closely. Let's talk about the Harbour Pointe pool deck for a second. They seem to be taking a very deliberate approach there.
Absolutely. I think their cautious approach really highlights their commitment to responsible stewardship of community resources.
Yep.
It's refreshing to see them gathering all the necessary information, exploring alternatives before committing to a costly replacement.
Shows they're thinking things through.
Yeah.
And, prioritizing the long-term interests of the community. And their willingness to consider that less expensive skim coat repair suggests that they're not just, throwing money at the problem.
Exactly. They want to find the most practical and cost-effective solution, which ultimately benefits everybody.
Right.
Now, before we wrap up this part, I do want to touch on something that I think is woven throughout all these discussions, and that is community engagement.
Yes. The board's commitment to transparency and community involvement is definitely apparent. They're planning those town hall meetings, they're welcoming feedback, and it seems like they're really making an effort to involve residents in the decision-making process.
And that's so crucial for building trust and ensuring that, decisions reflect the diverse needs and perspectives within Brander Mill.
Right.
It really empowers residents to have a voice in shaping the future of their community.
Well said. So in part 3, we're going to be looking at some intriguing questions and potential future scenarios based on what we've learned from this board meeting. What possibilities are you most curious about? Okay, so we've talked about all the big decisions from this BCA board meeting. We've analyzed what they could mean for residents. And now I think it's time to have a little fun.
Yeah, let's put on our forecasting hats here.
Exactly. Let's play a little what-if game and explore some potential scenarios for Brander Mill's future based on everything we've learned.
All right, I like it.
Okay, so let's start with those rental restrictions. What if the board does move forward with some kind of limitations? What could that look like?
Well, I think if restrictions are put in place, we might see a shift in the types of residents who are drawn to Brander Mill. It could become even more appealing to families who are, seeking that stable owner-occupied environment.
Interesting.
What?
How might that impact property values? I imagine that's on a lot of people's minds.
Oh, for sure. And it's certainly possible that those restrictions could help maintain or even boost property values, by ensuring a consistent level of owner occupancy. But it's important to look at the potential downsides, too.
Right. What kind of downsides are we talking about?
Well, limiting rental options could inadvertently reduce the availability of more affordable housing.
Oh, okay.
And that could potentially impact diversity and make it harder for, certain folks to find a place to live in the community.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's a very complex issue with a lot of factors. Okay, so let's shift gears. Let's imagine a scenario where the BCA board decides to really ramp up commercial development in Brander Mill.
Okay.
What could that look like?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, we could see new shops and restaurants popping up, maybe even some entertainment venues. It could create a much more vibrant, walkable community where you have everything you need right there.
Yeah, imagine being able to just walk or bike to your favorite coffee shop or restaurant.
Yeah.
What kind of impact might that have on residents' lives?
I think it would really enhance convenience and quality of life. Less reliance on cars, more opportunities for, connecting with neighbors. Just a stronger sense of community overall.
Yeah, I could see that.
And plus, it could bring some new job opportunities for residents. Right there in Brandermill.
Right in Brandermill.
Yeah.
Okay, so completely different scenario. What if, instead of expanding commercially, Brandermill focuses inward, doubles down on its residential character, prioritizes enhancing existing amenities, and fostering an even stronger sense of community? What could we see there?
Okay, well, we could see a lot of improvements to parks, walking trails, the community centers, really making Brandermill a haven for families and those who love spending time outdoors. And imagine more community events and activities, things that bring people together and create an even more welcoming atmosphere.
I like it. Well, it's been really interesting to think about all these different possibilities. Of course, these are all hypothetical scenarios, but I think it highlights how these decisions being made by the board can really shape the future of Brandermill.
Absolutely, and it all comes back to, why staying informed and engaged is so important. Your vote, your voice, your participation in these community discussions, it all matters.
It really does.
By attending board meetings, taking part in surveys, speaking up, residents have a very direct impact on the decisions that shape their community.
And it's interesting. Even something that might seem minor at first, like that clerical error in the election, can have these ripple effects that lead to important conversations and changes.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's a good reminder to stay curious, stay involved, and stay connected to the issues that impact you and your community. And that's really what the deep dive is all about.
Until next time.